Damn it. Yeah, the mean streets of New York City are not kind to live streams. Damn it. All of this stuff, and it still can't maintain a stream. Let's see. I think we're back on X. Are we back? Are we back on YouTube? Can't tell. Looks like maybe no. Upcoming. Why is the FBI involved? Yeah, it ended it. Man, I get so upset when that happens. But what can you do? Sometimes I want to be live walking around. I think it's still live on X. As I was saying, he was trying to conflate what Cullen was doing with what I do. We saw Blake do that in the phone call. He said that I called him a name that I don't think I ever called him. I think John Cullen called that. And I saw this where things that he was saying and doing, were being attributed to me. Ryan Moss said, "Oh, Kirk said by his first blow up that can't," and at that in speak and found general him material, really trying to socially engineer me, and then using that material against me. Because remember, a week after we did that show, Blake put out a broadcast where he was saying, Cullen and Jason are stealing my material. And it's quite amazing. Blake went from like 2,000 or maybe 5,000, some relatively small number of followers on Twitter. I looked at him yesterday. He was up to 30,000. I think it took me like a year or more of, big things like running into Norm and gaining 30,000 followers on any social media platform is not easily done. And I just become very suspicious of these characters like Blake when they sort of come out of nowhere and they repeatedly state that they're not interested in being independent journalists. They're just concerned citizens who are trying to do the right thing, and suddenly they rise to social media superstardom in a way that, even people who are trying really hard to do it have a difficult time achieving. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It seems counterfactual. It seems like they're lying, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but it seems like a crew of jackasses who always seem to be adjacent to George Webb and his brother. It's strange, that coincidental aspect of it. Seemed to be coming at me. So when Cullen started producing these statements that lawyers and lawyer-adjacent people could easily construe as threats, could put into complaints to Twitter, to YouTube, and also it's happening at a time that I'm finally, once again, gaining some traction in social media. Because again, I rely on this for my livelihood. People following me on X, people subscribing to the different channels. That's how I'm earning money. So when that stops, I'm not going to be able to pay for food and other things that I need to live. That's their goal. This is not a game. This is not a joke. They're trying to harm me, and they have, over the past 9 years, harmed me seriously. So either John is unable to understand that, unwilling to behave in a way that would mitigate that, or deliberately involved in helping them do that. I'm not going to bother to figure out which of those it is. I just told him I'm not going to be able to talk to him anymore, and I need to make it clear to everyone that anything that he has ever said is his opinion and represents his position only, and likewise the same is true for me. What I say are my statements and opinions. And so, like I said, luckily he did delete those things, and I was able to send a notification to the lawyer people that I had issued a cease and desist, and the comments that weren't even attributable to me had been removed. So that was good. Got a pretzel van here and free bubble tea. These people really ride bicycles dangerously. So, yeah, the local law enforcement, this is what I wanted to talk about, and this goes back to George and his brother, because people are getting all upset about ICE. They want to protect our criminal counterfeit goods traffickers, aggressive criminals who I'm sure are involved in other crimes. But there's been a lot of federal law enforcement encroachment on local jurisdiction that I've never really heard too many people make a big deal about. I mean, we've spoken in the past about the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force, the JTTF. It's strange, even some NYPD people who I like look at this thing favorably. This was started in 1980 within the NYPD, and I know that Sal and I'm pretty sure John McCarry, I don't know if I've spoken specifically to Eric Dim about this, but like I said, even NYPD personnel who I think are good people and want to do the right thing, they look at that as like an elite unit of the cops that I guess you get more money and everything. They have been, and I'm not blaming them, they've just been caused to have kind of a positive point of view of that thing, probably due to the FBI propaganda and their treatment of what that is and how it's presented to people. But the point is, that is the FBI coming in and exerting an unconstitutional, arguably, a lot of people argue, unconstitutional. So see, we're back with weed. I mean, again, this just speaks to the failures of local law enforcement. I'm certainly not against selling weed, but just like I'm not against selling Apple headphones, we don't want it to be done by criminals. If they're going to legalize it or decriminalize it or whatever it is that they've done in the state to sell it and collect taxes, then they need to enforce that people who aren't selling it legally can't do that. But the local law enforcement has utterly failed in New York City. That's why we have hooligans skateboarding in the park, even though the signs say you're not allowed to, endangering public safety. This little baby here could have these guys skating right around me in a very unsafe way. Now, of course, if I engage with them, I'm just putting myself at greater risk. Here's a Waymo. I guess that's the second one I've seen now. But the cops have failed. They are failures. So when we talk about defunding the police, I mean, that's like if there's a supermarket in your neighborhood and they never have any food there that you can buy and there's nobody working there that can sell it to you, and then you're talking about having it close, does anybody really care? It's not doing anything in the first place. So I don't want to defund the police. I want a properly trained and well-funded police force. I believe I've even suggested increasing the funding to the police and financially incentivizing them. That's why I did the evidence bounty. I think when you financially incentivize things, they happen. And by the way, the FBI is proving that because they're paying these guys more I've read the FBI JTTF. It's extremely controversial. Do people remember, and this goes back to George again, when we had Valerie Caproni as the FBI General Counsel, she went and visited the Portland City Hall when the Portland police said, oh no, we're not going to be in this JTTF, it's unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional from the standpoint of a federal law. It's unconstitutional. Yeah, Caproni flew from, or they've gotten rid of it. Isn't that convenient? But I mean, look at all these articles about the controversies surrounding the FBI JTTF. And that other article was telling us that something like all of the 56 around the nation have these JTTF task forces. They're embedded in basically every police department, and it's unconstitutional. The framers of the Constitution did not want one large federal police force because they felt that that would, be a tool of tyrants, and that we wanted states to have individual law enforcement because there's something to that tension where if one state says, hey, we want misdemeanors to be legal, maybe everybody leaves that state and moves to somewhere where they're not doing that. The state loses funding and they have to change that policy. If it's this blanket federal policy and blanket federal enforcement, it's just condensing power in a singular thing. That's what Caproni is all about, almost throughout her career, about condensing in a tyrannical way. She sits the U.S. District Court, vile. Fortunate that I think she's 7. She really should have been rotted for many decades. A horrendous, horrible individual, corrupt. Worst people to set foot on earth ever. Jack Smith. She's codified lawfare in many ways. Like the chef de cuisine making the recipe. That's what I see. We've got ICE, which is, a federal law enforcement agency, but, constitutional scholar by any means, like I said, but versus the Constitution, state. I think for more moving in situation where we're sat these competent morons, and I'm not obviously with Trump to be aligned to say he's a Republican couldn't possibly win in New York. But New York, like I see now I'm sad because I can't even get comments, because I'm not really even live anymore. I'm at the portion of the video where I'm sort of said what I was going to say, and I'll keep rolling because you never know what sort of adventures I might get into on the walk home. But that was it. That's the discussion, you know. Everybody's upset about federal law enforcement encroaching on local law enforcement when Trump is doing it. But since 1980, we've never seen this kind of outcry. Nobody's ever protested against the JTTF, at least not in New York, not in the way that they have been against ICE. And by the way, if you were protesting against the JTTF, you might say like, hey, we don't want JT. I'd like to know how many people who responded to my 911 call outside of Twitter, how many of them are getting some sort of salary spiff from the FBI JTTF? Is Detective Ibrahim, not detective, lieutenant? Is Lieutenant Ibrahim a JTTF member? Is that even publicly known? Because was he there protecting the FBI's interest at Twitter when they refused to arrest the guy who choked me or even look at the evidence that I had been choked, and instead gave me a ticket that a criminal court judge said this is facially defective, it shouldn't have been given to you, and it's dismissed? And that now the federal district court is defending that tooth and nail? Are they protecting federal interest at the expense of my rights and the law? There's a lot of evidence that they might be. I think they are. These are concerns. I have never once heard anybody protesting anything like that, because if the JTTF has infiltrated the NYPD, and if what I'm saying is correct, they're doing it in a way that can infringe on your rights, shouldn't people be a lot more concerned about that? That a law-abiding citizen who goes to tell the new owner of a business that the FBI is illegally using it to spy on people, that I get attacked and the police protect the attacker, isn't that of greater concern than illegal migrants protecting their right to sell stolen goods on the street? It's strange what people choose to protest in this city. It's very strange. So here's Fifth Avenue in decrepit state. Everything is, not everything, but so many things are going out of business or have gone out of business. You know, Charles has been on a tear lately about how coming back to New York was so depressing for him because, you know, when he grew up here, everything was kind of on an upswing, and now he's in Penang, where Southeast Asia is on a major economic and technological upswing, and our city is crumbling around us. Economically, infrastructure, it's basically just a disaster. Look, Fifth Avenue, empty. I don't even remember what that was. A lot of Halloween parties coming up. What are the police doing at Microsoft? The police love to hang out at the big tech companies and do nothing but text. Chat on the phone. Probably getting paid by Microsoft, I bet. I don't know. Why are the police there? The police are bought and paid for, it seems. If you're Twitter, if you're Google, if you're Microsoft, then they're interested. If you get choked by somebody the police know, they don't care. They like that. They're going to protect the guy. Let's see, I don't know, maybe I can still get comments from people on X. Is there anybody commenting on X. The comments don't seem to work. I can't see them, at least, in this mode on X. So it's annoying. We had it going with YouTube and then it cut. I'm spending so much money on so many different services to try to create this kind of resilient live stream, and it's just, you know, no technology is infallible. Let's see what else is happening around in New York. For the longest time, this was an Army-Navy store. We're already on stores, you know, closed and then new things opened. Actually, I haven't walked over here in maybe a little while. Let's see. I don't recognize this. Ghani. So perhaps there is some good to come of this. Maybe things that normally wouldn't have a presence on Fifth Avenue will get an opportunity to come in. But I think it's mostly just things going out of business, which can't possibly be good. I'm missing all the lights here. A lot of construction happening too. So I released another video derived from Cub Keller's Dolby Vision HDR 60 frame per second eyewitness evidence video of the Charlie Kirk assassination. I was able to do a 400% magnification of Frank Turek's phone. I stabilized the video and zoomed in on Frank Turek's phone, and then I rendered that out in a couple of different slowed down modes, 50%, 25%, 10%, so that people could focus on exactly what was being reflected in the phone. I'm not sure what it is. I think we see the police officer who was standing back over there by that van. Some people say there's a laser reflecting there. That could be correct. It's interesting. It's something for people to look at. That's over there on X, at JG_CSTT. Have a look at that. Tell me what you think. I'm not sure what's there. A lot of people are telling me all kinds of different things. They think that his microphone exploded still. I don't know how anyone could still think that and have looked at any of the videos. The microphone remains magnetically attached to his shirt. We have a lot of clear video of that now, and there are several people who have been married to that theory from the day it arrived. Remember, originally I thought this video of Charlie Kirk was a slow motion 240 frame per second video. When we saw evidence that that wasn't the case, I moved away from that. We still needed to explain what those dots are, and I have provided that explanation, not because I made something up, but because we got a better understanding of the evidence. Other people, when evidence comes forward that shows that the microphone quite clearly hasn't exploded, they don't care. They still want that to be what happened. You know, again, you can't necessarily determine why that is. Some people might say it's because those people are social engineers who are trying to promote stupid theories just to make anybody talking about anything other than the FBI theory make them look crazy. Maybe even Candace Owens is doing that. A lot of people were giving her a tremendous amount of grief on social media about a video that she released. I saw some people saying like, oh, does this look like the room in a hotel that a rich person would go on vacation in? And I'm like, how the hell do you know where she's vacationing? Maybe she's in a mansion and this is the pantry. Who knows? I mean, these kind of judgments, I don't know. I've said what I have to say about Candace Owens. She was rude to me when I met her in person. She ignored all of the very important evidence that I've been looking at and talking about that millions of people a day are looking at on X, I know people are sending it to her, so she's obviously got some issue with me, or maybe it is explained by her wanting to focus on everything that's not valid evidence or stir up her own stories. I don't know. I don't really care at this point, but it's obvious that she's not interested in talking about any of the things that I've raised, so let her do whatever she wants to do. Photo care, lighting rental place. Autumn in New York is a nice time of year. Like I said, it's going to be gloves weather pretty soon. Might become a little difficult to walk around in the cold. I've done it before. Getting sick of these broadcast cutouts. It just creates more work, more frustration for people trying to watch. Sometimes I wonder if it even hurts the show, because then people say like, oh, Jason, you have all these technical problems. I mean, again, almost nobody else even attempts to do what I do as far as these open-ended walks all over the damn place, through different neighborhoods, past different emergency vehicles using who knows whatever kind of radio equipment, just speaking extemporaneously for how long I've been going, an hour? All right, well, yeah, turning it off now is pointless, because then undoubtedly something crazy will happen the second I turn the thing off. That is always the way it goes. Got Chick-fil-A. You can join the Cheddar Club if you want to. New York City, unfortunately, is in serious decline. It really is not the fun and exciting place that it was many years ago, I'm sad to say.
Oh my God.
People will say, Jason, you got to get out of there. I know. But at the same time, I just hate the notion of getting chased out of town by communists and crazy people. Actually, when I was leaving to take the subway down to City Hall, I ran into that guy, James. Do people remember I used to had a brief series with that guy, James, who used to sell records outside of Radio Shack? See, he got permission from Radio Shack to do that. And he would demonstrate various Radio Shack equipment out there, playing the records on their stereo equipment. And he like sold vintage records. Anyway, he and I did a couple shows on the record with James. I just ran into him. He's still watching. He knew all the research and stuff that I was doing with Charlie Kirk. He's got some interesting insights. And he's in remarkably good health. He told me how old he was the last time I saw him. He's over 60, but he looks much younger than that. So, you know, he's one of these guys who's into non-pharmaceutical remedies, let's say. And the second you start saying alternative, it sounds negative. But he appears to be in very good health. And remember, he had a serious problem on 9/11. He was living downtown and basically woke up at 8 o'clock in the morning with his apartment was filled with smoke and dust, and or maybe he didn't wake up to that, but when he went back to the apartment, his building was condemned and he lost everything that he owned. It was totally destroyed. And he became homeless after that. Could you imagine that? Having just wake up one morning with some kind of catastrophic disaster that your insurance doesn't cover, you lose everything, your health is damaged. See, those are the kind of people who, the other thing we've been hearing about is that food stamps are stopping on November 1st and people are losing their minds over that. But most of the people who are making TikTok videos, I've seen a lot of people wearing like makeup. It's like, how do you have money for makeup if you can't afford food? Isn't makeup really expensive? Yeah, I don't know. I just think there's too many people gaming the system, including these cops who aren't enforcing the law. It's very upsetting to me. Friday, October 24th, 2025. Who could have known New York City would be in such a decrepit state? You know, at one point, 2025, you'd think there'd be cars flying around, robots everywhere. People don't want robots. A lot of people maybe don't want that automation. But that's basically it. The FBI, from a legal standpoint, is involved in the Charlie Kirk investigation because local law enforcement obviously has asked them to become involved. They have the statutory authority to do that based on that 2012 law passed by Trey Gowdy, which frankly to me just seems like a way to paper over what they were already doing anyway, getting the FBI involved arbitrarily when it suited them, quite probably for the purpose of covering up crimes by government and government actors. And now they just want to be able to not get sued for it or whatever. I don't know. At least have a cover story there. Anyway, that's all.